great day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with the hometown commander, back for another episode of Millzy Brews. And today, it's finally time to talk about Tawnos. I am very excited for this one. Tawnos the Toymaker, Simic, fun times. Let's go over Tawnos, and we'll talk about what the goal is for the deck, and we'll go down the normal shindig. Tawnos Toymaker, 3 green, blue. 3/5. Whenever you cast a bird or beast creature spell, you may copy it, except the copy is an artifact in addition to its other types. The copy becomes a token. I think Tawnos looks really interesting because it's kind of like Volo, right? In a sense of copying creature spells, but Tawnos is a little different. It cares about beasts and birds and friends. There's a lot of great beasts in Magic. There's an obvious one. If you're a green player, we know our obvious friend up here. But I was very surprised to see how many solid beasts and birds there are in Magic. Of course, birds bring Birds to Paradise to mind, but beasts bring things like Hydrated Krasis, Ulvenwald Oddity, Elgar Gargaroth, the big boys of my Gorgclaw deck for the past. But I also didn't actually think about it until I sat down that there's a lot of actual mutate creatures that are all beasts, which means we have a little fun mutate sub-theme in this deck, which should be kind of cool, as well as a mixture of a bunch of cards. So for this deck, I had the privilege of playing the Arena event this past week. We got to play with like Brawl decks that they made. And the Tawnos one was kind of interesting. It had the mutate stuff, but I, to be honest, probably would just build it completely differently. And of course, we have access to different cards in Commander, so we are going to try to make it a little bit different. But I wanted to just give my shot at Tawnos. If you've never seen a Millzy Brews episode before, we're starting with a main board of 142. We're going to talk about my ideas for the deck. We're going to get the deck down to 100 by talking through it. We'll do a quick play test at the end, and we're gonna ship it so that you can try it at your local table, try it wherever you want to try it, think about it, make it your own. That is the goal of Millzy Brews, is for me to brew a deck, for you to give me your opinions on it down in the comments, what you would try, what you wouldn't try, and then take the list and make it your own. So we're gonna start with the lands. I think this is a pretty fair 34 land mana base for this deck. What I'm going to start doing is pointing out kind of points where you can cut some budget out of the mana base, mainly in Cavern of Souls and Urza's Saga. I just think they help keep the deck a teeny bit more consistent. We'll take the Mana Crypt out there as well, but Saga is mainly in there for Soul Ring, and then the Mana Crypt, if that's something you want to play, or if you want to play like a Skull Clamp or something like that, it would be for that. Otherwise, you can take that bad boy out, throw another forest in there. But Cavern of Souls I really like. You're probably going to pick beasts. I'd imagine most of the creatures in this deck are beasts, and it's going to help you there. Same thing with the Secluded Courtyard. I'm not playing Unclaimed Territory, the Exelon land, but that would be in there too if you wanted to. A lot of it's just trying to make sure our lands come in tapped. Coming untapped, sorry, as much as possible. Lijar Mirror Lake's in here because it can copy a creature, which could be fun, depending on what you have. Enchantments. A lot of fun enchantments we can play. I'm excited to finally put Vesuvian Diplomacy in a deck. Whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary. So the cool thing we can do here, especially with Mutate, is mutate onto a creature and get a copy of it. That could be our commander. That could be any of our other creatures that we have. It could be a big dumb green creature that we want to win the game with. There could be a lot of things we could do with it. But I think this card looks really cool. This is going to pair really well. Reflection and Lijar. Unfortunately, we have to pick a type. But again, I think Beast is going to be the most common type in this deck over Birds. So I think you're probably better off picking Beasts. Also, the cool thing about that is I think all but one of those mutate creatures in the deck are beasts, so you're going to get copies of the mutate triggers with Reflections of Lijar because you're casting it for the mutate cost, so you will get actually 2 of them, not 1. So that's a good thing to remember when it comes to Lijar. Extravagant Replication seems fun at beginning your upkeep. Create tokens, copy another target, non-land permanent control. Cool part about mutate stacks are they're treated as one thing. So if you have a giant mutate stack and we get to our upkeep, we can copy that mutate stack. And yes, it gets annoying to try to deal with, but it's a ton of fun and it's something that we can do a really good job at. We're playing the classics, Heuristic Study. Growing Rights of Itlamok, I feel like in this deck goes a really long way, especially for its backside being like a Gaia's Cradle that we can actually play. We're going to go pretty wide if our time on Brawl has been any indication of this deck. It can go very wide and we'll have access to a lot of great things. Heuristic Study for some draw. Utopia Sprawl. Wild Growth is just there for some ramp. You can also throw in, like Fertile Ground as well if you want to. Beastmaster Ascension and Garruk's Uprising are ways to just try to help. Garruk's Uprising, card draw, but giving everything trample. Beastmaster Ascension, just trying to pump up our board, get ourselves moving in the right direction. At the end of the day, we need to win the game. We can flood the board out with creatures, but we got to push in for combat eventually, and those are the cards that are going to help. Artifacts, we have our classic Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Great Henge, goes really well in this deck. It won't activate on the copied spell coming in. The copied spell will come in as a token. You do have to remember when you copy a creature spell on the stack, it's not considered to be creating a token. So Doubling Season and Parallel Lives and all of those do not double those tokens. So we have to be a little bit careful with how we maneuver that. So the copy won't activate Great Henge, but the original would. But we can use something like Twinning Staff, which says if you would copy a spell one or more times, instead copy that many times +1. You choose new targets for the copy. The cool part here is this is going to automatically copy. And then I figure why not throw Lithiform Engine? For 4 mana, we can tap it and copy another one. Or we can copy, activated or triggered abilities. The kind of magical Christmas land here is if you have a Lithiform Engine already to the ground and 2 spare mana, you could play a Crater Hoof and then tap the Lithiform Engine to copy the ETB ability. When Crater Hoof comes in, you're going to get it twice. Just so you know. The other thing that is fun here is we're playing something like Helm of the Host. Helm of the Host is in here. One for Tawnos if you want to make a ton of extra copies, but it's also because it's always great to make extra copies of giant green creatures because they do tend to end the game. But you could copy the Helm of the Host trigger with Lithiform Engine or Stronic Resonator. These guys are both in there to, one, trigger the triggered ability of Tawnos. That's actually a triggered ability that's going off to allow you to copy it, cast it. So these will actually be able to do that for you, or you can do them elsewhere. I like Lithiform Engine because it can copy instant sorceries, and it can also just straight copy permanent spells. So if you are playing a non-legendary permanent, you can copy it with Lithiform Engine, which is cool too. Ronas' Monument is a very, very, very good card, especially in a deck where we're going to be playing a lot of green creatures, making them cheaper and then giving us a bonus every time we dump a creature in. And then I really like Combined Chrysalis here. This is a card that I had to decent success in my Volo list. Creature tokens you control have flying. So this is cool because all of those copies of the spells that you cast come in as tokens, artifact tokens, which means they would have flying. And that makes them even more dangerous, especially when we're putting down things like Ulvenwald Oddity or Elder Gargaroth or Craterhoof. These are massive beasts that get even worse when your opponent has to block them in the air. All right, onto our sorceries. We're playing a good mix here of Ramp, Cultivate into the North, Kodama's Reach, Rampant Growth, Nature's Lore, 3 visits. We want to make sure we get our mana down quick. I put in something like Seagate Restoration because it's a land on the back, or you can throw it down on the front side to get those good draw spells. It may be maybe one of those first ones to get cut. It was just an idea as far as what we could play. As far as the instance, Brainstorm, Growth Spiral, Harrow, Roiling Regrowth. Again, I think this is one of those decks we want to get online fast with our lands. We want to make sure that they're there. Joint Exploration card I just threw in there from Darmy United. Thought that could be interesting. But then we're coming in with some of the important stuff. Double Major seems like it could be kind of fun. Copying a spell and not making it legendary. If we have enough mana, we could actually do this to Tawnos and copy Tawnos itself and make it not legendary. Beastmaster or Beast Within, Bong of Fire, Rapid Hybrid for some removal. And then if if the budget's a concern, take out the Whirly Tutor. You probably don't need it, but again, it's in there for trying to get specific things. As for finishers, Triumph, Overwhelming Stampede, Finale, Devastation. Obviously, Finale is a little more expensive than both of these two. You could probably cut the Finale and just run these two and be completely fine. But I think in a deck like this, where we're already going to be able to dump a ton of creatures in with no worry at all, we want this many overrun effects to end the game. Full Flowering seems kind of interesting. Just getting to populate X times, so we take a token we already control and just make a copy of it. We're already going to have massive creatures out there anyway that probably have copies of them. Or worst case scenario, if we have all the birds like Gilded Goose and Birds of Paradise that make mana, we could just copy those and get more Metadorks. I threw the Arenicus's Vial Duplication in here as an option. It makes a non-legendary copy, and the copy has flying. Could be kind of interesting depending on the situation. And then Life's Legacy's in there for some draw. We play a Elder Gargoth, something like that. Life's Legacy it, and you draw 5 or 6 or whatever the buff is at the moment. Draw a bunch of cards, refill your hand, keep your plan going. Under the enchantments, I am running Concordant Crossroads because I feel like it's one of those cards in this deck that could set you up to win the game depending on how big your board is. Get a big board of all your tokens in, drop the Concordant Crossroads at the end, have a big swing. Guardian Project seems pretty cool. It's going to help you kind of draw over time. I think I prefer Elemental Bond and Garruk's Uprising to Guardian Project because these two do not care whether they're tokens or anything like that. So if we're copying the right beasts and the right things like that, we're always going to draw twice off of these two, where we would only draw once off of Guardian Project. So that's why I think I prefer these two in this deck, and the same thing with Volo over Guardian Project, but I can see why Guardian Project gets a lot of love in this deck, and I'm not saying that it's not worth having a third one. I just think I kind of like these two better. The thing I like about Garruk's Uprising is it gets that stapled on trample for all of your creatures. So that's the spells for now. Coming up to the creatures, I have 49 creatures here. There's no way we're going to actually run 49 creatures. This number is going to have to come down. But basically, I wanted to give a snapshot of what I thought decent and relevant beasts and birds were. And there's a lot more than I thought there was going to be, especially some that caught me by surprise. One, forgot that Displacer Kitten was a beast. That's kind of gross. Didn't know the Cultivator Colossus was a beast. I don't know how much it affects well in our deck, but I just thought it kind of interesting that it was a beast. I don't think we'll actually play it. We get to see some all-stars that have graced the Goreclaw deck at one time. Cragplate Bailiff probably gets better now that you get a copy of it. Elder Gargoth, of course, all-star. Garruk's Harbinger, getting a second copy of it, even at 3 mana, is great. Gemrazor, of course, now that it can mutate, you're going to get 2 copies of it. Krosan Warchief, going to reduce the cost of all our beast spells. That didn't see its time in Goreclaw, but it's still an interesting card. Obstinate Baloth gets even better when you get 2 of them, so that turns into 8 life. Just like Thragtusk turns into 10 life because we're going to get 2 of them. That makes them even better to play. Thunderfoot Baloth, Ulvenwald Oddity, both see their time in Goreclaw. Terra Stomper seems kind of cool. 6 mana for 2 8/8 seems pretty good. 7 mana for 2 Siege Behemoths seems pretty good. Owlbear, I think, looks even better when for 5 mana we can get 2 creatures and 2 cards. Through Owlbear Covenant, because it's both a bird and a bear, which I think is great. I want to hurt someone with Owlbear Cubs so bad. So I'm not 100% sure that it's going to last through the... I'm not 100% sure it's going to last through the cuts, but I at least wanted to put it in consideration. I think our big choices here are Hydroid Krasis, Elder Gargaroth, Craterhoof. These are the cards that... their upsides get doubled when you can have 2 of them. I think the same way about something like Ulvenwald Oddity, Thunderfoot Baloth. These just massive beasts that when you have 2 of them are going to get better. Questing Beast is a beast, and I know that we wouldn't get the legendary copy. We wouldn't get to keep it unless we have any other way. So it's in here just because it is a beast, and I think it's still worth the 1 of, because Questing Beast is a great card for 4 mana. But if you notice yourself leaning towards more of the legendary creatures, I would recommend something like Sakashima of 1,000 Faces or Mirror Box. Bring those in to kind of eliminate some of the legendary things that you have to worry about, although I try my best to pick as many non-legendary creatures as possible. And then just one Planeswalker, Vivian Monsters Advocate, is one of my favorite green Planeswalkers for creature decks because of its abilities. We can look at the top card at any time, cast creatures from the top at any time. The +1 just gets us to Beast token. Her +1 will activate Elemental Bond, but it won't activate Garruk's Uprising, so that's kind of cool. And then the -2, whenever you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature with less mana value. I almost said CMC because it's still ingrained in my brain. Put it on the battlefield and shuffle. This is really cool because when we get up to 8 or 10 mana, although Tawnos won't copy the one we get off of Vivian's ability, I don't see a scenario where going to get a free creature is a bad thing. For example, if we're already casting a Craterhoof, which is going to give all of our creatures trample anyway, why not go dump a big creature in before it even comes down and get the train rolling that way? Or if you're casting something with 4 or 5, you could go get a Mana Dork for free, go get something like Beast Whisperer for free. I know you wouldn't see the cast triggers, but it would still come in and give you some value going on. So it's one of those things where I think Vivian creates a lot of situations where you just end up making good decisions. The other good part about Vivian is in a deck that's playing a lot of really big creatures, like if we ever dump 8 into Hydroid Crisis to make it a 10 with Vivian, you could go get Craterhoof for free, and you have a good chance of potentially ending that game, depending on whether you have a haste enabler lying around, or depending on what cards you have down. So I like Vivian. It enables some cool combos, and I think it will help our list. Okay. So that's kind of our overview of my thoughts on the deck, what I'm thinking of doing. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's go kind of type by type. We'll talk about what I think's really integral to the deck, what I think we can cut, and let's start making some options. I really like Diplomancy. I think it can be used here, especially if we're going to really be going for this mutate plan, which I really want to. I could be stepping too hard into the mutate plan, but I think it's going to be good because it's going to just continue to get our board wider, which I think is what we really want. By that token, I think something like Path of Discovery can go. I love Path of Discovery because it's going to put +1/+1 counters on our creatures, but I think we need room for so many other good cards, and so I think it's going to come out. I'm going to take the Guardian Project out. I know there's going to be people who say, no, why would you take Guardian Project out? Again, I think Elemental Bond and Garruk's Uprising are both better cards for this deck. They're going to activate on every single creature that comes in, not just the non-token ones. So in that respect, I think they're both better, and they're going to do us both more good. Defense of the Heart is is an enchantment that I love in a lot of my green decks, but I don't think that it does as well in this deck. It says during your upkeep, if one or more of your opponents has 3 or more creatures, sack it. Go get any 2 creature cards from your deck, put them into play, and shuffle. This is a very powerful enchantment, but I think we want to leave some slots in our deck for ramp and getting Tawnos out quicker, rather than doing the cheeky Defense of the Heart plays that may be there, as much as I love that card. I like the Beastmaster. Kindred Discovery is a card that I'm intrigued at, mostly because it's a lot of card draw. I guess the only downside to it is we have to pick a creature type, but I think what we're going to find when I finish this list is we have a lot more beasts than birds, and so I think that this is going to still be worth it, just like Reflections of Lijar, where we call beast and we copy all those beast spells and we make them great. Extravagant Replication, again, I really like the look of, but I feel like it could be the enchantment that comes out here, and I love Unnatural Growth, but it could come out as well. 4 green pips could be a lot in this deck, depending on how our mana spread goes, so we might want to keep that in the back of our minds when we go on to do more things. I honestly don't know that we'll need the Signet and the Talisman. I think we're going to have a pretty easy time ramping in this deck. We've got lots of ramp spells, and we have lots of creatures that produce mana. So I don't think we're going to need those 2 very much. I honestly don't know that we'll need Herald's Horn, but I do like the idea of Herald's Horn reducing cost of spells. But I wonder how often it's going to truly make a difference, because most of the time we're going to want to call beasts on Herald's Horn. So that's a tough one. The really cool part is we do have a couple changelings where that would make a difference. I think we'll come back on Herald's Horn for that. Same thing with Helm of the Host. I love the idea of Helm of the Host in this deck, but it could end up being too expensive for what we want to do, and maybe it comes out to keep a more integral card in our deck. All right, moving into the instants and sorceries. I think we can pretty confidently cut Joint Exploration. It's not as good as some of the other ramp we have in this deck. I think we'll cut Seagate Restoration as well. As much as I like the card, I think we don't need that card draw as much. I love the idea of keeping Whirling Regrowth and Harrow in. We do have 12 basic lands, so we should have plenty to do there. So as far as basic land search, we have Rampant Growth. Into the North is in here for Rimewood Falls. I'm now realizing that could be a problem because it's the only snow land we have. So maybe Into the North comes out to keep the Cultivate and Kadama's Reach, which we have more legal targets to go for. I almost feel like we probably won't need Preordain. I still like Brainstorm because you can do it at instant speed, but maybe we don't need Preordain. I feel like we could have enough card draw if we can get these kind of guys out and get them moving and go that route. I like the idea of Life's Legacy, but again, I tend to not run a ton of card draw in my creature decks because I tend to find that once you get up to a certain amount of mana, you're kind of always chugging and putting out gas. So I'm not that worried about it, but I could understand why people would want to value the card draw. So if that's something where you say, no, Millzy, I really want the card draw, that's okay. Bring those cards back in. When you go to the link for this deck down in the description, I'm going to keep all of the decks we cut in the Considering tab. So you can see all of them, including some of the ones I cut before I started the episode because I thought maybe they don't fit as much. All of those will be down there in the Considering section so you can see them and you can make those changes as you want. Okay, Quandrix of Command looks like a ton of fun just because we can put a creature back in our hand and recast it. But I'm thinking maybe that if we really wanted to do that, we could play Fading Hope or something like that for 1 mana. So I think maybe Quandrix Command goes a little bit above what we want to do. I don't want to take out Fierce or Cyclonic Rift. I know a lot of people are going to say, yes, they're very expensive instants, but to me, they're blue staples, and they should be played in a deck, especially in a deck like this. I always found them to do well in Volo as well because they help aid you in the situations that you need them. So I'm sorry if I offend you by keeping Cyc Rift and Fierce Guardianship in, but I think they're really important. I would concede and take the Finale Devastation out, though, because I think we have Overwhelming Stampede and we have Triumph. We don't need it. Although for me personally, I would keep the Finale in as well. I would have the 3 overruns because I think you want to at least hit one of them, even if you can get 20 cards deep in your deck. I feel like we don't need Pongify and Rapid Hybrid. I like both of these cards, but they both do basically the same thing. I will just cut Pongify. I don't see us needing a ton of removal. By that, I mean, I don't tend to run a ton of removal in my creature decks. I couldn't make you think I'm crazy, but most of the time I find a efficient attacking threat will do all the removal you need. We want the beast within and at least some removal when we need it. All right, we'll get into the creatures, and this is going to come down by at least 15, so this is going to help us out with a lot of the 127 still left in the list. So what I think we need to do is talk about what needs to be in for sure and what's probably a little too good. So let's talk about, we have Birds of Paradise and Gilded Goose as birds that tap for mana. I think that's pretty cool. It's also great if we can get doubles of them. Stuff like Gwenna and Loam Speaker are in here because I think they are creatures that, although they aren't beasts or birds, might do us some good. I'm realizing that Loam Speaker might be a little bit of a nombo since it's not either of those creatures. Maybe we wanted to come up for that. And I'm kind of thinking the same thing on Gwenna. Maybe it's not as good since it's not one of those types and we have plenty of other things. Same thing with Selvala, although I really like Selvala. Maybe that's something we consider later once we get the list cut down a little more, whether any of those can work back in. Otherwise, I think we're going to be kind of solid on mana. I don't foresee us having an issue with that. As far as the mutate creatures go, we have Auspicious Starix, Dreamtail Heron, who's a bird, Essence Symbiote's a little beast that says whenever we mutate, we get a counter on that creature and we gain 2 life. If we care anything about the mutate strategy, I think this card deserves to be in there just because it's going to kind of gain us the life in the process as we do it. Gem Razor, We have Migratory Greathorn, which gets the land. We have Parcel Beast, who we can tap to look at the top cards for creatures. We have Pouncing Shore Shark, who returns target opponent creatures back to their hands. Souvenir Snatchers, which allows us to gain control of non-creature artifacts. And then Trumpeting Gnar, which makes tokens when it mutates. So remember, the way that Mutate works is we have to mutate on non-human creatures. So let's say my Mutate stack starts with Masked Vandal right here. Let's say that I put Parcel, that's a bad example. Let's start with a better one. Let's say I put Greathorn mutated onto it. Migratory says whenever it mutates, we get our basic land, put it in the battlefield tapped. Okay, let's say I put it on top. So I have a 3/4 that also has every ability that Masked Vandal has. Okay. So I have this stack. Then let's say that I were to mutate Gemrazor onto this stack. What happens is I target the stack with mutate, and my opponent has a chance to respond just like every other mutate. If they remove the creature that I'm targeting with the mutate, the creature just comes in as it would normally. But if it doesn't, I'm going to choose whether I want to put it on top or the bottom of the stack. If I put it on top, its power and toughness replaces the power and toughness of the stack already. If I put it on bottom, its power and toughness no longer matter, but everything that's printed on the card goes, not type line, but all the abilities on the card just get added to the pile. So in this case, we have a 3/4 with this ability, and this ability. And then every mutate ability that stack already has, plus the new one, would go off. So I would get another Greathorn trigger now, and I would get Gemrazor's mutate trigger. Those would both go off. I would resolve them. And then I would keep going. Then if I did Dreamtail Heron and I mutated it onto that stack, I would get the Greathorn trigger again, I would get the Gemrazor trigger again, and I would get that Heron mutate trigger again. And so you can see as you build this stack up, you're getting all these abilities again and again and again. The cool part about Diplomancy is that when you start making copies of these stacks, it allows you to get one of these really big stacks going and then make copies of it and have more than one of them. And then it makes it harder for your opponent to take out this massive stack. The way that mutate stack works is everything in that stack moves wherever that card moves. So let's say someone exiles with my mutate stack with the Sword of the Plowshares, the entire stack goes to exile. Every card goes with it. It's treated as one card. Now, funnily, I'm pretty sure that if your commander gets mutated on, all of the cards go to the command zone, but they can't be accessed back out of it. It's kind of interesting. Be very careful mutating onto your commander. It's almost better always to mutate on something else. Bloodline Pretender looks interesting. Whenever another creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield, it gets a counter on it. The cool part about here is it's changeling. So I think we just probably want to pick Beast in this scenario or Bird. What I did on Arena a couple times that I found worked really well with Bloodline Pretender was when you cast it, pick Bird for one and pick Beast for the other. And then no matter what spells you cast and no matter what happens, you're going to get +1/+1 counters on Pretender. As a note for the mutate creatures, when you mutate onto a stack, the creature that you mutate is not considered to be entering the battlefield. So for the purpose of this Pretender, mutating a creature would not activate the stack. So that's something we do need to keep in mind. Blossoming Bogby just seems like a ton of fun. Whenever it attacks, we gain life, and then creatures get +X until the turn for the amount of life you gain this turn. When we have two of them and both of them attack, this is going to make for just a massive attack. So I kind of like the idea of this, especially if we can mutate it. It just seems like a ton of fun. Symbiote and this out might lead to a pretty cool attack if that's the case. Cragpay, although it has haste, I'm kind of thinking it's just going to be a little too expensive for what we want it to do. Craterhoof is our win con, or one of our win cons, as well as our other overruns. So we definitely want to keep Mr. Craterhoof in all of his glory in the deck. Curiosity Crafter, 4 mana for a bird wizard. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is kind of one of the other reasons why I wanted to cut some of the card draws, because we have something like this, and we're going to have lots of creature tokens lying around. So this seems kind of cool. Displacer Kitten, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, exile up to one target non-land permanent you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's a very long way to say whenever you cast a non-creature spell, we could blink a creature with an ETB effect and get its effect again. We could blink something like Craterhoof again and get its effect. We could blink something like Owlbear and get its effect. I think this just enables some fun ways for us to get card advantage if we want to. The only downside of this, if we blink a mutate stack, it all comes back separately. So that could be good, depending on, if we have one of those enchantments out that draws us a card every time a creature comes in and there's 6 creatures on a mutate stack. Well, then we got 6 triggers. We just got to be a little bit careful with Displacer Kit and making sure that it is always out at the right time. Now, it does say up to 1, so you do not have to blink permanent, but I still think it's going to be good. Gargaroth, one of our big beasts. Whenever it attacks or blocks, we either get a 3/3, draw a card, or gain 3 life. This is one of those cards with 2 of them out that is just going to produce massive value for us. So I'm very excited about that one. Feral Hydra seems kind of interesting. Hydra Beast comes in with counters and we can take counters off. I think the more that I look at it, the more I like stuff like Hydra Krasis, so we probably don't need this one. The only half decent part about Feral Hydra is that we get to control the value of X. Garruk's Harbinger, whenever it does come damage to a player, we look at that many cards from the top and we can put a Garruk Planeswalker or creature card from them into our hand. This could be good because we're going to need some added help with the card draw, so I'm going to leave it in just because it's cheaper. It's going to come down easier, and maybe that turn we get after Tawnos down, maybe we can play 2 or 3 cheaper creatures instead of one big one and just flood the board wide. Gemrazer, mutate creature. Gilded Goose, one of our birds. The cool thing about the birds and these flying birds in this deck is they're like prime mutate targets. Of course, we want to mutate on them to keep the flying. So that's kind of why I like playing Gilded Goose, even though it's a little bit worse than Birds of Paradise. I think it's like the perfect target for mutate. Hydra Krasis, big boy jellyfish Hydra Beast. You gain half X life and draw half X cards when you cast it. So even if it gets countered, the cool part about this is if Tawnos is out and we cast Hydra Krasis, it gets copied for whatever the value of X is, but the copy doesn't get cast, so we don't get the life gain and the draw off the second copy. But let's say we put 5 into X, so we put 5 mana into X, so this is a 7 cost Hydra Krasis. It would come in as a 5/5, but we would draw half of those rounded down. I always try to put an even number into Hydra Krasis just to make it easier to take half. But the cool part is we will get 2 of them with Tawnos, and it'll copy the X. Whenever you copy an X spell with a value of X that you've paid, you copy the value of X for the other spell. That is useful. Kelpie Guide can untap and tap permanents. I can untap any permanent you control without any restrictions, but if you want to tap a permanent that someone else controls, then you have to have 8 or more lands. Kelpie Guide seems like it could be pretty good to untap our stuff if that's what we want to do, but it also could be good to tap down our opponent's stuff as well. The Croson Warchief, reducing all of our beast spells and then regenerating beasts, which is great. To really quickly summarize Regenerate, if you've never seen it, Regenerate says if a creature would be destroyed, or I think it's just be destroyed by battle or by a card. In fact, you can regenerate it, and it says the next time it would be you tap it, remove it from combat, and it basically just gains indestructible from that one time, not to the end of the turn, just from that one effect. It basically gains indestructible. It's kind of an odd mechanic, but in this deck, I think it's going to protect a lot of our creatures. Ledger Shredder, one of the best birds that's come out as of late. It's going to help us churn through our deck just a little bit. Again, I also think it's just a really good mutate target, and I don't mind paying 2 mana for a good mutate target. Lovestruck Beast might be a little bit too bold here. You make the 1/1 off the adventure, and it can't attack unless you control a 1/1. I think more often than not, Lovestruck Beast might end up being too much effort, but I like the idea of it, and I wanted to at least give it the consideration. Law Mage's Familiar, 3 mana for a mana creature. Maybe that's a little too expensive. Master Vandal, when it enters, you can exile a creature from your graveyard. If you do, ping a artifact or enchantment and exile it. I think this is good. Cool part is we could potentially get 2 of them. So this kind of acts as a beast within, if you think about it, or a claim, nature's claim or something like that on a creature. So I kind of like the idea of this. I think it's good to stick in. It's kind of a reclamation sage or something like that in this deck. So I think it's good to keep in the slot. Greathorns are mutate. Mortide of the Frost, it enters the battlefield as a copy of target permanent control, except it's legendary and a snow in addition to other types. And if it's a creature, it enters with 2+1/+1 counters on it and has Changeling. So, Mortide's kind of the worst one to copy because if we copy it, since it's a Changeling, it's going to end up screwing us a little bit. I've played with it on Arena a little bit, and I think the juice isn't really worth the squeeze on that one. It ended up just causing too many problems with having to sacrifice things. And yes, you get extra ETBs, but it ends up being so much hassle on the back end. So I think we're going to cut that one. Obstinate Baloth, just 4 life when it comes in. As much as I like this one, it might end up losing out to some of our big beasts. I think I prefer Thragtusk because it does have more ability when it leaves as well. Orifar is a shapeshifter, which means it's a beast and a bird, so it would get copied, although we will probably lose it right away due to legendary. But it's in here for its last ability, or its first ability. Whenever you cast an sorcery spell, I'm actually just realizing that I don't think that it works. I thought it was when you cast. I thought it would work when you mutate, but it doesn't. So I think we're going to cut the Orifar. Owlbear. I'm realizing this pulled up the Arena version. Owlbear, whenever it comes in, we draw a card. Could by the same argument be a little bit too expensive for the ability, but I think it's just kind of peak of exactly what we want. I really love the Owlbear Cub, but I think unfortunately it's going to end up losing its spot to a lot of the other really good things. We have Parcel Beast and Punching Short Shark. We talked about the Mutate. Questy B. I love Questy B, but maybe because it's legendary, it loses its spot out for some of the other good stuff. Rampaging Baloth, it seems perfect. We're not playing a ton of extra landfall stuff, but why not have an added bonus on top of the stuff we already have? Remember, land enters the battlefield under control, we make a 4/4, so that seems pretty good. Realm Walker. The really cool part about here is if Tawnos is out, we could bring one down in calling beasts and one down in calling birds. We just look at the top card and we can play creatures off the top. So this is cool. It's another kind of Vivian-esque type card, but it will get copies. So that's cool. Ridgetail Tusker, again, one of the little arena cards. Whenever it enters a battlefield, put a counter on each other creature you control. It just seems good. It seems like a decent upside. I'm looking more at this pile, and it may end up being kind of weak compared to some of the other big beasts that we have, but I like the idea of Ridgetail Tusker. Sawtusk, whenever it mutates. Siege Behemoth, as long as it's attacking, for each creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as if it weren't blocked. We just need one trample enabler to make Siege Behemoth very good. Souvenir Snatcher, another mutate. Terra Stomper can't be countered, and it has trample. Again, I like the idea of 6 mana for 2 8/8s, but I'm kind of realizing the more that I look at this list that we have enough good quality green creatures. Thragtusk comes in and gets 5 life. When it leaves, we get a 3/3. Really like this one because it's going to get us a lot of value. Son of a Baloth gives all of, as long as we control our commander, it and all of our creatures you control, it gets +2/+2, but everything else gets +2/+2 and trample. So it's going to turn on trample for our whole team. Wouldn't mind having 2 copies of this for the +4/+4. Trumpeting Gnar, going to make tokens whenever it mutates. This is one of the big things we want to mutate on and get that rocking. Oddity can flip over and give all of our creatures trample and haste, so that's a good thing to remember about the Oddity. Warden of Evocile just gives all of our creatures with flying less mana to cast, so that's pretty great. And the Web River Changelings in there, just because I threw a couple of Changelings in there because I wanted to see what they would kind of jive on, but I think that it's going to end up being a little bit less good than some of the stuff we have. And then I still like Vivian a lot. Being able to look at the top card and kind of extend our hand like we can with the Realm Walker just seems like a really good ability, and I don't want to discount it. And actually don't think we have any creatures in the deck bigger than Craterhoof Behemoth, except if we ever were to cast a giant Hydroid Crisis, we could get Craterhoof off of it with the Hydroid Crisis. Goreclaw plays a lot more bigger creatures that you can kind of game this -2 off of, but that's okay. All right, so we're down to 112. I think we did pretty good. I think we got this creature pile down to a lot more relevant things. We're keeping the mutate dream alive. We have a lot of really good beasts in slot, so I think we did a good job there. The instances sorceries, I really like Arenicus. I'm trying to decide which is more worth it, Arenicus or Full Flowering. Full Flowering seems good because we can put the more mana into it to get a bigger return. But I also like Arenicus because it's going to be able to copy our commander or anything else we want. I think for the sake of this, we'll cut the full flowering for it. I think this comes into more handy more often in the instance. I love Growth Spiral, but I think with Harrow and Rolling Regrowth, Growth Spiral may not be as good as I want it to be. And then I don't... for the sake of just saving a little bit of budget, we'll cut the Worldly Tutor, even though I really like Worldly Tutor. We're already playing a couple expensive cards here, so we'll try to save a little bit of budget as far as the deck goes. Coming down to the artifacts, I like Helm of the Host, but I wonder maybe if this is the deck for Helm of the Host, as much as I really love it. Maybe it comes out. I really think Stronic Resonator and Lithform Engine have a better chance to shine in this deck, giving us a lot better of a chance. I like Unnatural Growth, but I wonder if we get more benefit out of things like Beastmaster Ascension and Kindred Discovery over it. Again, I really like the Replication, I really like the Lit Jar, and I really like the Duplimancy, so it's kind of tough to decide what to cut here because, you know, the upside on Growing Rights is great. The upside on Duplimancy is great, but I guess the question is it going to be worth it enough? I mean, yeah, we're playing a ton of Mutate, so I feel like it's going to be worth it. The cool part about a Duplimancy is it would copy something that's getting targeted by Arenicus as well, so... Okay, yeah, I think we'll keep it for now. We got to cut 7 cards, though. I think I want to cut the Replication for the Lit Jar and the Duplimancy. I think I value those two a little bit more. This could be aggressive, but I kind of want to cut the Herald's Horn for the rest of these. I kind of like the other ones better. Down to 5 cards. I like Owlbear, but I wonder if it's too much for just 2 cards. Like, I can see a better argument for Thragtusk because you get something when it leaves. I really like Realmmarker. I really like the Vandal. I wonder if something like Kelpie Guide is good enough at 3 mana, like for what it does. I really like it, but I wonder if some of these cards just do a better job what they're doing. I really like Beast Whisperer, but Beast Whisperer isn't drawing us as many cards as this, and this are. So I think I kind of prefer those a little bit more, down to 102. We're still keeping a good creature count, which is what we want to do. We're a creature deck at the end of the day, and we care about the creatures, so we want to make sure that we have plenty, especially a good mix here. I really like all these creatures. This is where this is going to get tough. I do like all of them. I guess the Warden is an argument because we don't have that many creatures with flying. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, well, we actually do have a decent amount of creatures with flying, so Warden of Evos Owl may not be that bad. And the cool part is when you copy it, it would be 2 reduction, which also reduces the mutate cost as well. So, all right, so I've talked myself back into Warden of Evos Owl. Oh, man, I think I'm going to cut the Fierce Guardianship. As much as I love it, I don't think I'd love to just have this be a little bit more focused on just nailing these creatures out and really getting them involved, getting them down and getting them going. As much as I love Fierce Guardianship, and it's a great card, I'm not quite sure what I would do in that scenario. I'm really not sure what my last cut is here, but I've always said on this show that sometimes you need to make the cut so that you can test it or look at it again and see what you bring back in. So I think that's kind of what we have to do, is just make a call and then look back and decide if that choice was good or bad, depending on what we see. I don't know that I want it to be a creature, but the problem is I really like the rest of my supporting cards here. So I feel like it has to be a creature. So I feel like I just have to call it and go. I'll pick the Bloodline Pretender. I really like it. I think it's a good creature. I feel like it could come back in, but I want to keep the ratio of really big beasts on deck so that we can use them for good value. We need to mull that one. we unfortunately have to mull that one as well. Jeez, 34 lands coming in handy, I guess. All right, here we go. A little better of a hand. So we draw for turn 1. We'll get the forest down, draw for turn 2. Get the island down, draw for turn 3. Play this Flooded Grove, and I guess we can get the Gnar down. It would give us something, draw for turn 4. Get that down. Guess we could get the beast down, but I kind of want to copy it. I guess we could leave up some stuff. 5, get this down, then we get Tawnos down, and then one more turn. All right, so I would probably... I'm thinking double mutate onto the Gnar, giving us 2/3/3 tokens, sets us up into getting this Starix down and mutating off the Starix. All right, let's go one more time. One lander. Usually I don't have this much trouble. It could just be the shuffler as well. Okay, not too bad. We probably Fabled Passage here turn 1 because we have the Utopia Sprawl that can go on to... We have the Utopia Sprawl that can go on to a forest. So we want to go get a forest here. It'll come in tapped. Close and shuffle. And then turn 2. Get the cavern down, calling... probably beasts at this point. As much as we have the Birds of Paradise, it's going to be pretty cheap to get down. Get the Utopia Sprawl down there. Next turn, play the Courtyard. Actually, let's play the Alchemist Refuge. Float the green there for a Birds of Paradise. Get the Growing Rights down. Look at the top. What is it, 4? We get a creature card from among them. We whiff, which is stinky, but that's okay. We still get the benefit of the ability there. We've shuffled. Move on to the next turn. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess get Tawnos down. Drop the Growth Chamber. Pick up the Refuge. Next turn, drop the Refuge. Get the Bog Beast, get the copy, and then Growing Right flips. All right, so not too bad there. Kind of interesting playline. Again, this is one of those things where we want to test. We want to see kind of how the deck works. No deck is ever going to be perfect when you get down to 100. I firmly believe that playtesting is the way that you make your deck better, by figuring out where the strengths and the weaknesses are. And so... no better way to do that. I don't mind the playtest feature if you want to just run a couple quick hands, see how the deck does in those first few turns, and you can always make some adjustments from there. But thank you guys so much for watching. That has been Tawnos the Toymaker, and I will catch you next time.